Chapter 4. Wednesday afternoon. Doreen ran down the stairs lightly, making her way past all the bags of clothing. She pulled open the door to see a lovely older woman standing outside, nervously holding a big brown 9 inches x 12 envelope in her hand. Muggs dashed out and circled around their visitor. At least he was quiet now. The woman looked up at her and smiled. "It is you. You've been all over the media." She smiled down at Muggs. "And of course, your trio of animals." At that, Muggs barked once as if to say, "Of course." Doreen just rolled her eyes. "And you must be Penny. Come on inside. Let's see what you've got." As the woman stepped in, Doreen said, "Sorry. Please excuse the mess. I'm sorting through all of Nan's stuff and getting a lot of this cleaned out." "I wouldn't doubt it," Penny said. "Nan has always been a collector of antiques. My husband was too." That stopped Doreen right in the middle of the living room. "Really?" Penny nodded. He and Nan had all kinds of discussions. He loved this set, but Nan would never sell it. She said it was her retirement fund. "And now that she's retired," Doreen said, "she doesn't need it." "That's the best thing ever," Penny said with a smile, making a Vanna White arm sweep to the room. "Think about it. Nan doesn't need the money she set aside. I think that's a success in itself." Doreen laughed. "May I see your file?" "Oh. I'm sorry." Penny handed over the envelope. "The knife is in there too. And I did keep a digital copy of everything. I should have done that a long time ago. Then I could have just emailed them to you." "If you could do that too, that would be great," Doreen said, "because I might do more searching that way." "Sure. It's already digital anyway. Need your email address," she said, "and I can send it to you when I get home." Doreen gave her the email address. "Now you understand that. I can't guarantee this will go anywhere, right?" "I know," Penny said, inputting Doreen's contact info into her phone. "I feel almost guilty asking you. It's just the police don't have anything to go on. Nobody I've talked to over the years has any idea what happened to Johnny. It's so very frustrating. I guess I'm hoping another pair of eyes will turn up something different." She grinned at Doreen. "You do appear to have a very different pair of eyes." Doreen smiled. "Apparently I have a different perspective that's shaking things up a little." "You're still in the same house you lived in when Johnny went missing?" Penny nodded. "Yes, but not for much longer. I guess that's another reason why I'm feeling the time pressure to solve this. I'm listing the house for sale soon and hoping to move into a condo closer to my older daughters as soon as I get my house sold." "So that could be within 2 weeks, or it could be 2 months, Doreen said. "Or 2 years. Depending on the market. But it's a lovely family home." "Okay," Doreen said. "Would you mind if I come and take a look myself, to see the backyard and to get a feel for the location he disappeared from?" "Sure," Penny said. "I'll give you my address when I send you the digital file." "I'm sorry," Doreen said. "Would you like to sit down?" "No, but thank you anyway. I don't want to bother you any more than I have, and I should be going. Whenever you're out that way, just pop on by. The thing to remember is, I don't know where the crime scene is if there was one, whether he went for a walk or met his buddies over the back fence because a park abuts our property there, or where he might have gone from our home." "The park is behind your property?" "Yes, and to make matters worse, he used that gate all the time. I think he came and went most of the time that way. So, if somebody called to him from the park or sent him a text, he would have gone to meet him, using that gate, correct?" "Except for the fact we couldn't afford to buy a cell phone back then, and texting didn't exist," Penny said with a smile. "Right, of course not," Doreen said with a shake of her head. "But that doesn't mean he didn't have somebody who stuck his head over the gate and called out to him." We saw his friends do that often. At one point we had to stop him from buying drugs that way. At that, Doreen's eyebrows shot up. Penny nodded. But what can you do? He had just George in his life. Their parents had died a couple years earlier. Johnny had been a teenager then, and George had given him a home, helping him to grow up. But Johnny was fighting that. He had a job at the hardware store. He had a girlfriend, but that relationship wasn't stable. As a matter of fact, the girlfriend said, at that time, they hadn't had anything to do with each other for a couple months before he went missing. She didn't mention any reason behind their breakup. Just that she'd found somebody else soon afterward. Is her name and other pertinent personal information in the file? Penny frowned. I think so. Her name was Susan Robinson. She died of breast cancer about a year ago. Oh wow, Doreen said. So is everybody from his circle no longer around? Yes. Johnny's two buddies and his girlfriend. They were together all the time. They didn't really hang out with any others to the same extent. At least not that I knew of. And yes, they are all dead now. All you have are the witness statements in most cases. And I don't have copies of all those. She hesitated, then looked sideways at Doreen. I know this is very inappropriate and pushy, she said, but I was hoping you would have connections with Mac, and maybe you could get the other information I don't have. I'm not sure he can do that, Doreen said. Just then, Mug slumped to the floor half on and half off her foot, squatting to scratch Mug's behind the ear. I don't know what their rules and regulations are, but I can ask him. Right. I'm sure all kinds of red tape stop him from giving you too much information, Penny said with a sigh. And how frustrating is that? All I want to know is what happened to Johnny. You've had no contact since, and he was a healthy young man? Penny nodded. He was healthy. He was footloose and fancy-free. He was a young man, but he didn't have a whole lot of purpose. He didn't really know what he wanted to do. He didn't like working at the hardware store. He had visions of a much bigger, more grandiose lifestyle, but honestly, he hadn't reached the point where he wanted to put in the work to make it happen. Oh. So a typical young man, Doreen said with a smirk. Exactly, Penny agreed. George got really frustrated with him, and that was hard because I always heard about it. But at the same time, I couldn't do or say anything to make it any better. No. Young men have to be young men, and they grow up in their own time frame, Doreen said. Do you have any children? Penny asked. No, Doreen said. Not yet. At my age, probably not likely to happen. We have 2 daughters, Penny said. And I have to admit that it was much easier to have daughters than to always look at a son and wonder if the same thing would happen to him. We kept a very close eye on the girls growing up, but I think they understood just how devastating losing their uncle had been for us. Yet, of course, young people know it all and have all the answers. Penny laughed a little. Only as they get older do they realize they never had any wisdom to begin with. She gave a wry smile. Doreen nodded. Okay, I'll go through this. Please don't have any expectations that I will find anything. No, Penny said. Of course not. She reached out a hand and squeezed Doreen's. I'm just happy to know somebody will look into it, and that Johnny won't be forgotten forever. I can understand that, Doreen said slowly. I think that's one of the reasons why I pursue these cases. Because families are waiting for answers. People need closure. Some folks' whole lives are lost in worrying and wondering what happened. I can't imagine anything worse. Muggs got up and walked over to sniff Penny's leg. He rubbed his head against her calf. She bent to pet him. Well, he's a new addition. He is indeed, Doreen said. Muggs came with me. Goliath is still here. So is Thaddeus. Penny nodded, as if the names didn't mean anything to her, and it occurred to Doreen that she didn't know how long Nan had had Thaddeus and Goliath, a name Doreen had given the cat. So there was a good chance Penny hadn't met either of them. Penny turned and walked back to the front door, smiling at the bags of clothing. You have a lot of stuff to go to Goodwill. I do, Doreen said. Honestly, I'll probably take a bunch of this to the consignment store. Nan had some very good quality clothing. Oh, that's a lovely idea, Penny said. I shop there quite a bit. Wendy has a lovely store. Interestingly, she didn't look ashamed or in any way put out by telling somebody she shopped at a second-hand store. I'll have to check it out, Doreen said. I dropped off some clothes already, but I've been so busy that I haven't had a chance to look for anything for myself. Wendy has a great selection, Penny said. Check it out while you're there. With a wave of her hand, she walked onto the front porch and down the steps. Once again, Doreen stood on the front porch, waiting for somebody to drive away. She didn't know why she needed to make sure people left. It probably had to do with the fact she was still hoarding all these expensive antiques in the house. As soon as Penny had driven down the cul-de-sac, Doreen stepped back inside, bringing Muggs with her, set the alarm again, because now it was almost 4 o'clock, and headed into the kitchen. Now to check the back alarm, then go upstairs to check that bed out, she said. Her phone rang then. She groaned as she looked down at Mac's identification. How do you always know when I'm getting ready to get into something? What are you up to? He asked as soon as she answered. She rolled her eyes. I'm trying to figure out what is taped underneath the bed frame in my bedroom, she said. The packers will come early next week. Hopefully on Monday. I need to know about anything hidden in the furniture before they take it. And we found something, but I can't lift the massive bed frame. With your mind set, he said, I can certainly understand that. What's underneath it? I don't know, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I've moved the box spring and the mattress to the floor, because the movers are not taking those. But the bed frame itself is very heavy. Muggs won't leave it alone. He kept barking at one of the slats, so I checked, and sure enough, something is taped under it. Muggs, huh? Right. That's why I'm trying to figure it out. For all I know, it's nothing. But the bed is heavy. How do I lift it and check out the slat? She paused. Are you on your way home? Yeah. I'm leaving the office in 5. Why? Well, you could swing by, she said in a cheerful voice, adding, and you could lift the bed and I could look underneath. She could almost see him give a mental shrug. Yeah, I can. I'll be there soon. And he hung up. Now that is perfect, she said to Muggs. He just stared at her. She chuckled and headed the way back to her bedroom. As soon as Muggs returned to the bedroom, he'd hopped inside the slats, which she found amazing because he was pretty rotund. He'd parked right where that piece of paper, or whatever it may be, was. It felt more like plastic than paper. She didn't know what that meant. She continued to move stuff out of the master bedroom into the spare bedroom closet. She rearranged some of the furniture in her room, so the movers could easily dismantle the bed when they arrived. Then she put new bedding on the mattress. By the time she'd fluffed up the pillows and put them on her makeshift bed, it looked mostly normal on the floor. Then she heard Mac drive up. Muggs barked and turned around with his belly flat on the floor. He crawled underneath the edge of the bed frame and headed down the stairs. He knew it was Mac. How could he not? She followed him to shut off the alarm at the front door and got it just in time.